this kind of goes back to these creatures and such. You said about underground. Do you think that there's coming a time where they're going to be coming up in abundance and humanity is going to be faced with a very real reality, not just dorks like me that have a podcast to talk about it, but these normal people who think I'm crazy? Do you think they're going to be faced with the reality that these monsters do exist?
I think so.
And what do you think that would look like if it happened?
I think the better question is what's been written first and foremost, because I can have an opinion on an idea, but it's been prophesied that this is absolutely going to come to pass. Mm-hmm. And it says a third of dominion is going to get given over to death. And this is why I say it's the underground for a reason. Like, that's where they build their armies. They build them inside the earth and they release them when they're ready. But it says that dominion's given to them to kill a quarter of the earth with a sword, with plague, with famine, and the beasts of the earth.
Jesus. You guys, Revelations is starting to make a lot more sense with this guy, what he's talking about. I'm going to read the book of Revelations again. It's starting to make a lot more sense. This stuff is all going to happen. It's in the Bible. It's prophecy. And now we can see it start to even sound real, right? Like him talking is like he's talking about the book of Revelations. Hi, you guys. Welcome back to Kingdom Up with Mila. So I want to go ahead and resume part 2 of Nathan Reynolds' testimony. He is talking about being born into a secretive family with a dark legacy. There's child exploitation that goes on, being raised up in a Luciferian home as well, where his family gave him over for power and money. He is a Nephilim, part of the Nephilim bloodline, and he is exposing all of it. So yeah, let's go ahead and watch part 2 and get right into it.
I think on one side of it, I think we really do have an entire subspecies of creatures that do exist mostly inside the earth, and they are not readily surface dwelling anymore. And I do believe, like in Lake Havasu City, Arizona, man, inside the London Bridge is a massive room, like a throne room, where they engage in this magic. But this Brotherhood of the Serpent, they call upon Nachash, the dragon. And
would that be in normal terms Satan?
Yeah, most people know him as Satan, right? Yeah. But like there is a great red dragon. Like, it's a physical, that's what he looks like in reality. He was cursed, and man, he made him a monster. Yahweh made him a monster.
So he's talking about God making the devil a dragon. There's a real dragon out there, and he's red, and this is what he's talking about.
And they would commune with these things. There's 13 grandfathers take 13 of their grandsons, and they bring them into these rooms and do these things on these specific times and rituals for all kinds of stuff. But the dragons tell them the future. This is like always what they've been able to do is like Satan leads Yeshua up onto a great high place and says, I shows him all the nations of the earth and all their kingdoms and their reigns in a moment of time. He shows him the future. That's what they do. They can show you what's to come. This is why we get hunted by them. He knows if we're going to be part of his adversaries. He knows if we're going to be on his enemy list. And that's why he targets us at our youth. That's what so happens. So many people, they're like, why has my life been a nightmare from the beginning? It's because you have a purpose and a destiny that adversary absolutely categorically does not want to come to pass. It's a real life Terminator scenario. And so he sends his assets in to destroy people, to ruin their life.
To detour us from our God-given purpose, which is to glorify God in everything that we do. I truly believe that's why we're put here, to glorify God. We're made in God's image, and without God, we are nothing.
And those meeting places happen when they sit down in these rooms and they try to call up these creatures. It's from inside the earth. It wasn't like ethereal mist. They were physical things that would come out of these tunnels, and they would come into the room and they would consume the offerings that were given there. And then the words of the Nachash would come forth, and they would prophesy to these guys. Like, they would prophesy out of the mouth of the serpent what each one of their life callings, their shots. He's the shot caller, man. It's like a pimp from prison. He's calling the
Does that sound familiar too? God forbids, mediums and us talking to spirits and talking to the dead It's literally prohibited for a reason, probably, because that's what the devil uses to get to us and to get to detour us from our path. And he uses all of that. And he's talking about that the dragon tells the future. He tried to do it to Jesus on the mountains when Jesus was fasting for 40 days and 40 nights too. And the devil was trying to tell Jesus, I'll give you everything. I'll give you all the power if you just bow down to me. So literally we see it over and over, the same thing repeating. And that's why we should stay. If the Bible says something, stay away from it. If it says don't participate in witchcraft and divination and, reading the future, it's for a reason.
Shots, and you had a bunch of fallen watchers that were in prison in Tartarus for a reason. Yeah, but they got ways of getting messages out, just like the cronies in jail today, and that's what a lot of people are dealing with. They think they're dealing with the top dog, and they're like, I'm finally into the big game. And it's like you're dealing with, a private in the hierarchy, but he can masquerade like a general. And so some people are really dealing with death himself, and some of them are dealing with one of his princes. And this is what my family's covenant was with the dragon. They didn't mess around, man. They went all the way to the chain of command. They uncovered a bunch of my great-grandfather's grandfather was an archaeologist who dug into Indian mounds out in the Ohio River Valley. And they started finding a priest class that was these serpent worshipers. And that's what they started calling upon. And they started trying to wake up and rise up Huachiblos, which is these deities, these dragon fire deities that demand.
In Ohio?
Where these mounds were found is the Ohio River Valley.
He's talking about his family's covenant, his grandfather's grandfather. They were calling on to this deity, which was the dragon. It's the dragon himself, the devil, calling upon his name to rise him up, to get power and partake in whatever it is that they do, right? Whatever it is that they were probably looking for power.
Yeah.
Are we talking about serpent mounds?
Yeah. Well, this wasn't specifically, not that I'm aware of that it was specifically a serpent mound, but it was a mound that was in an area that was now being farmed.
Okay.
And so whether or not it was specifically a serpent mound, it was not identified as that. But they ended up finding a lot of these ancient tomes. They found the writings of this priest class, and they started using their magic to call back up these fallen ones. And they were, the part of the trade is the priest class has all this secret knowledge that they then use to rule the kings with. And that's what they wanted. So that's how the Reynolds family, this is also documented in a book called The Gilded Leaf by Patrick Reynolds, who was a bloodline descendant specifically and in the actual inheritance of the Winston cigarette company, the tobacco empire that ended up buying Nabisco Foods, that ended up running the world.
What relation is it to you? Like an uncle?
I don't know that I am a bloodline relative of that guy.
Oh, okay.
Patrick Reynolds specifically. My Reynolds family is the one that does the black gold stuff, all the secret, disgusting, dirty money. They're the white launderers of the money, right? But you got to have your seedy, corrupt group. And that's what my family did. They did all the dirty stuff.
Wow.
And so but in his book, in his firsthand account, they talk about the Joshua coin and them using a coin that was from Judas that he betrayed Yeshua with, and the 30 pieces of silver that was the blood guilt money. They would touch that silver coin to anything they wanted, and it would grow an empire. The cost was always a massive bloodshed and a massive demand of life, and that's always what the serpent required.
So they had the same coins that Judas used to when he betrayed Jesus, and they would touch it to conjure up whatever it is that they wanted. Like, what? This is so deep, bro. And it doesn't go back that far. This is like, he's talking about his grandfather's grandfather. That's not that long ago.
He wanted life. And so like on one side of the equation, that's what they used to build the Reynolds empire. That's what they used to go down Alcoa and all the aluminum industry and all of the stuff they spray on us and the stuff they poison us with and inject us with and all the variables of complexities of targeting that they've done against us. That all comes from that covenant that those two brothers sat down, did, and entered into a blood covenant with the dragon, man. And this is what the fruit of it was. Well, my family entered into that on a different route through this priest class.
So we're seeing the fruits of what the plan was, which was to poison humanity. Literally, our toothpaste is poisoned. We have fluoride in our toothpaste to dumb us down. We have fluoride in our water to dumb us down. We have our skies are being sprayed to dumb us down. Everything is to dumb us down so that we don't live a full life and live in God's purpose and live how God intended us to live. God wants us to live a full life, but this is the enemy's agenda. And he's talking about, we're seeing the fruits of it now.
Thing, and that's what they would practice down there, and that's the same old religion that people have been using a long time. So on one side of it, I've seen physical beings that are definitely not like our animals up here come out of these spaces from inside the earth. I've seen in deep underground military bases dogmen, like you would kind of describe them, some more humanized, and I think a lot of those were experimentation and genetic splicing. I think a lot of that was gene editing stuff that I've seen, but I do believe that some of these things are holdovers from the old days. They're the last of their kinds, and they've been breeding them, right? And I believe that that's the stuff that's prophesied that's going to come back out and cause the hearts of men to stop for fear of looking after these things that are coming up on the earth. You know, that's why everywhere I went throughout my youth, I could go to these tunnels and these caves and call out, and I could hear them, and they would call back, you know, and it's like, it's a...
So he's talking about they reserve these species from maybe from the beginning of time. They like breeded these species and they keep them hidden to use it as a scare tactic. And the end of times here coming up pretty soon, right? They're going to use these creatures to scare us. But just remember, if you have Yeshua, you have everything, and do not fear. Do not fear. God is so good because he gives us these sort of, you know, he'll warn us and he'll prepare us for what's to come. And so we're not gonna perish for lack of knowledge here. Okay, we're gonna literally do our research, and I'm grateful for this man's testimony because he is spitting some crazy stuff. You need to like go back to the video and watch it, and I'm probably going to watch this a couple times because a lot of stuff is going over my head, but the stuff that I can grasp real quick, it's like, what? Dogmen? Like there's all types of different species that they're holding and breeding so that they can bring back and it's wild.
Seductive power that draws you back into it.
You could call out to them, like, was it like a language or a sound or what?
Oh yeah, man. You can learn to call to them. You can go out here in these hills out here and do it. You can still do it tonight on these full moons and stuff. You can start calling out, and you'll think you'll hear coyotes at first, and then all of a sudden it's a totally different, you know, it's a different sound that starts to resonate, and then it's a different one that calls off from over here. Right. You got to understand, some of these guys that you think are just neighbors and stuff, or just people, like this is what they keep in their barn. You know, this is the stuff they keep. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I go out hunting for these things.
I understand completely, man. I got hooked back into it with Timothy Alberino and Steve Quill and a lot of these guys when I was married, and my wife didn't know anything about this whole stinking world of who I was and everything else.
How'd you meet your wife if she didn't know who you were? You suckered her. You suckered her.
That's a way to put it, man.
She's still with you, so she loves you, you know?
Bro, she's all in, man. She's amazing. Cool. She is my shield bearer, man. So she's amazing. Aww. She has fought. We have waged a war together beyond your wildest imaginations. She has seen the full force of the occult come after us, and people slaughtering sacrifices to try to desecrate us, and people try to hunt us and murder us in front of her face. She's seen it in front of my children's face. They've sent special kill teams after us in front of my children's face, man. And I have seen the living power, man. Recent.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, man.
That being said, man, I do believe that there is a hierarchy, and you can call upon the Most High, man, and he has delivered us. And I've never had to fire a shot at any of these guys. I haven't had to take out their drones. I have seen supernatural intervention. I've seen their weapons jam in front of my face, like chapter in the book called Murder on Their Minds, where I talk all about it, man. I've seen him provide supernatural miracles, because you got to understand, we're dealing with the fallen. We are not dealing with the Most High, and he owns a much more powerful arsenal. And let me tell you, at his word, all these nations, kingdoms, and thrones will bow. And it's an absolute reality. It's an inevitability. Amen. And so that's why I serve him, man, because I've seen what the power of covenant is. And I had a covenant with the law of sin and death before in my life, but now I have a covenant with the Most High of peace and life. And he's given me a new purpose. He's given me a family. He's given me a mission. He's given me the opportunity to do the things I dreamed of when I was that little. Man.
So he's talking about these people are coming after him, and he's seen firsthand the protection of God over his life. So he's clearly here for a purpose. He's supposed to be sharing his story right now, and they're trying to stop him, but he saw God's intervention, and God didn't allow. God probably sent his army to protect him, and that's beautiful.
And I used to run away in the night in Arizona, man. And I would run into the base of that mountain, man. There's these caves that are there that I just love caves. For me, it's safety in that. People call it hunting and all this. I'm like, dude, these to me were people. I'm more like a beast, man. I was ripping people's throats out with my teeth when I was a child to survive a fight. Like that does something to you when you try to see other children playing with a bat wing toy or whatever. And you're like, you're puking blood in the toilet.
Yeah.
Because of all the crap you just went through the night before, and like you are unrelatable to men anymore. You can't comprehend the things that are in your mind when you have been defiled so systemically for so long. And so I just lived with dogs. I literally would flee into the yards with people and I would crawl into the dog loose and just survive the night. But then that wasn't enough, man, because these were city dogs. Then I started looking for the feral ones, man. I started looking for the coyotes, and then I started looking for the wolves and crawling into their dens because I can imitate any of them, man. I can crawl around like a dog and be like a dog. You bet, man.
Wow.
You can get them to take you in if you know their language, if you know their gestures. You can learn all of this stuff, man. And like when you're little, when you're like a child, they'll treat you different, Yeah. And they man, I literally ended up living with these things. And
wow,
they're like, I have this love for wolves because of that. Because I've understood what a companion can be when you're desperate and distraught. And like, these were my best friends. And that sounds so weird to people, but like when I was a child, I bonded with the animals. I wanted to murder all the people because people were monsters. I couldn't imagine a world of the living. I got so lost in the world of the dead. And I just wanted to find some semblance of innocence and purity. And I could not find it in people because everybody was manipulating me. I was nothing but an asset to them. And I didn't know which end of me they wanted. Do they want my skills? Do they want what do they want from me? And so it perverted my understanding of people. And so I just fled to animals. And that's where I talk to these creatures and live with them. Well, then you start encountering these other ones, and you start to befriend them. And it just becomes like a pack. Well, then my family would rip me away from that and move, and I would have to try to find a new one. And there was this just constant destabilization. And so there's a lot of people that get caught in that world, man. And people brand them as feral children, like you might want to call it, or whatever you want to call it, man. But they're survivors. That's what they are, man. They're overcomers. They're the remnant. They're the leftovers of nightmares. And you know what? They're some of the most incredible people or things that have ever been. And that's why I'm here to preach the gospel to every creature. That's what it says. My commission from my king who gave me my marching orders is to preach the gospel to every creature. Mm-hmm. That's what I'll do, man. I'll do it in the tunnels. I'll do it everywhere, from the tops of the roofs to the bottom of the earth. But I am much more familiar and comfortable down there than I am out here. This is the world of oddities, where people think this stuff is like legend and myth and strangeness. And it's like, you go into these families, they broker deals with this stuff. They get down with these things and they generationally raise their children to have that seed line in them. So it's a different world than what most people are used to. But I tell you what, these animals they carry a history of what this land used to look like and what these people used to be. And it wasn't that long ago. This is a short history when you think of the last 150 years in the United States. That's not long ago. It was a wilderness. And there used to be...
He said 150 years ago. It's not that long ago, bro. That's like 3 generations.
150 million people who lived here, who raised animals and livestock and farmed and cultivated landscapes and brilliant, massive, beautiful cities. And yet they interacted with giants and these creatures that were oddities for time in antiquity.
You're talking about unwritten history.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Wow. You keep throwing everything out here.
They've been keeping all of this from us so that they can hold the power over us, and they can manipulate us, and they can treat us like cattle, bro. It's disturbing. My people will perish for a lack of knowledge. We need to seek knowledge. We need to seek wisdom and understanding. It's time to literally wake up. Like, this is insane. He's telling us that all the stuff that we've seen in movies is real. Okay? Like, bro.
Are you talking along the lines of like people talking about Tartaria today and how they basically built over entire civilizations and some of these structures that we have in these big cities? Like, for instance, I've heard this, and I've heard both sides of it. So in Philadelphia, they say that City Hall is actually remnants of an old civilization. We didn't actually build it. It has been here. Maybe we built on top of it or something like that. But when coming from that area, I used to run Center City, especially as like a rookie driver. They send everybody down to Center City. And so you're pedaling freight down in Center City with a freaking truck. And I can't describe to people how massive City Hall is in Philly. It's one of the most beautiful buildings I've ever seen in my life. And I've been in it. It is absolutely massive. You will get lost if you don't know where you're going. And I forget how long, but the idea of decades sticks out in my head. Like I was told that it took an extremely long time to build that building. And that always sat weird to me. I was like, how does it take that long to build a building? Like, this isn't like something that was built, I say thousands of years ago, where they were, making the brick by brick, make the brick, then put the brick there kind of thing or whatever, And so that I go off on that spiel because that's something that always sticks out in my head when I talk about Tartaria and things like that. But is that kind of like the angle that you're talking about? Like this idea that there was, you said 150,000 or a million people that lived here and they traded with giants and the cities and civilizations. What happened?
Bro, the giants built all those historical buildings that we have. Like we have it in every single state. In every single capital, we have the large buildings that were built by the giants. But that's another story for another time, another video for another time.
Happened to those things?
Well, I wasn't really hitting on the Tartaria and the architecture side of it. And there's other examples like the City Hall in Iowa and other places. I traveled, like I told you before, 4.5 years in an RV. And at the time, mud flood in Tartaria was in. And I was like, what? I'm going to go look. So I just started traveling around to these places specifically to try to find and identify and document evidence of this catastrophic event, or are these recovered cities, as opposed to the idea that we, all built these with horse and buggy and all the rest of it. Yeah. I wanted to know for myself, but that isn't specifically the history line that I was talking about. I'm talking about before that, the side of it that is definitely more like when you go in, like one of the best books for those of you that are book guys, The Discovery and Conquest of Mexico by Hernan del Castillo is the firsthand account of the conquistadors coming into the Americas and their strategies and tactics for infiltrating and enthroning a new deity known as Mary, right? The Queen of Heaven. They wanted to invoke her over this territory. And there was a massive battle between the priest class during that time. And you get to see these hierarchy of these ones that were worshiping in Mexico City predominantly, that was running a massive human trafficking campaign and all the sacrifices and slaughters that are happening for that. I mean, it's nationwide at that point. And we're talking millions of people that are being physically fed through butcheries to the priests. Like that's the way they did it. And that priest class fled north into the Americas when they got persecuted. And they came into the Americas, the Northern America, and they brought a lot of that ideology with them. And they began to use that, weaponize that power and start to take over the people that were up here. And they began to eradicate them and butcher them and force them into compliance with this. And then the land responded with this desecration and all these invaders began to come in. But this is stuff that they had prophesied was going to happen. And so a lot of them, they literally did not fight. They literally had prophecies that there was going to come bearded men with shiny metal helmets and they're going to come and you're supposed to bow down and yield to them. And so that's what they did. That's why you had a few hundred guys with a few horses and dogs, unbelievable hunting dogs, crazy stories in there, full armor, killing squads of people, these dogs single-handedly. It's
From Europe?
Yeah, bro. You want to talk about what dogs can do? We have no idea what dogs do. Oh, yeah. DeSoto and what he brought with his dogs in the Americas, most terrifying things that the natives had ever encountered was the dogs, because they would kill hundreds of people, like just jump from one to the next, ripping throats out. Like these are all documented things. So I love that side of the history of understanding where did this all come in here and why was there the expunging of the record of anybody who had a culture or a written language. Well, that's because we wanted to support this ideology of manifest destiny for this invasion force that was coming from Europe, was that it is our right to rule over these savages and to begin to take their territory. But ahead of that was the surveyors, and then and following them was this military expedition across the West, which was to the Army Corps of Civil Engineering, eradicate the history of the people out there. And that's what they did. That's why they built dams and rivers and lakes in specific places and changed geography. They're sponging any evidence that this is a advanced civilization. But we have firsthand accounts of people that said, we've been in the biggest cities of Europe, and over here, they're better and more beautiful and more grand and well-designed than anything we've ever encountered.
Wow.
This is not just one. Many people that came over here in the beginning could not understand the capacity of the people that were here. This is the origin place of the earth in many more ways than what people think of as Africa. This place is where the first documented evidence of a horse, of a camel, of all of these languages, mummies, the oldest mummies in the world. All this stuff is here. It's just not public.
But we can skip that.
Okay.
That was the last time I talked to them.
They didn't remember at first, and you were triggering memories? Is that what was going on?
Yes and no. Well, my oldest sister, I don't name any of my sisters because there's a lot of innocence still at play. I'll name all kinds of people, just not them. But my oldest sister, like, when I started talking about it, reverted back to the stuff and was like, I need help. I need counseling. I need deliverance. I need, like, please help me with all this stuff, right? And she wanted help and wanted to get out. And the next day when I went back to talk to her, she was gone. That version of my sister was gone. And they had this young guy that had moved into the house overnight. And she literally couldn't tell me anything about anything I said. She didn't remember anything that had happened. She didn't remember, like, me coming there to the house the previous day to talk to me about any of this stuff. She's just completely aloof, right? And that was my last interaction with her. And my dad freaked out when he heard that I had told her all this stuff. And then I went to talk to my other sister, who was closer in age to me, at a splash pad. I talk about this stuff in my book. Her and I are visiting at the splash pad. I brought my wife, Chelsea, with me as a kind of corroboration to all this stuff. And she was really responsive in a good way. But then right in the middle of it, my dad showed up at the park. And I mean, he slammed into the parking lot and came barreling over and had this screaming showdown with me in the park, calling on crazy and powers and stuff. Like, the guy went from his Christian self to this whole other thing in front of my wife's face for the first time. My dad was the most, you would have never seen a lick of scary ever until that moment. And then this other thing came out of my dad, the principality of the Reynolds family that he is in covenant with. And that came roaring out and cursed my marriage, cursed me with insanity, cursed my wife. You're going to be naked. All these horrible things. He's screaming and cussing at the top of his lungs at a splash pad. This is like a real splash pad. Little children like, ee! There's this like demonic massive battle going on over in the corner. And I was rebuking him and calling, like, it was like the sword that was in my mouth was far greater than his. Amen. Because I had the power, the authority of the Holy Spirit like I'd never had in my life. And I couldn't even hardly articulate the power that was on me. But he physically got up and ran away from me, screaming over his shoulder, ran as fast as he could and drove away, terrified of me. Amen. And that was the last time I ever saw my father was that moment. That was the last time I ever saw my sister. You know, I've not spoken with any of them since, you know, because
so he tried to rescue his sister, and then he goes back the next day. She's asking for help and telling him she needs help. He goes back the next day, literally her memory is wiped out. She doesn't even remember that she talked to him. I wonder what kind of ritual they did and performed on her, like, for her to forget all of the conversation. That's crazy. That is so unfortunate, man.
Because at the end of the day, they still sent my grandfather there to receive my daughter when she was born. He still flew up to the state to try to get access. I had a sting of one-man army standing in the birth center, you know, ready to run and gun with that guy if he showed up. But my family has never had access to my children since then. And now we have more children. Now I have 4 children. And that was the start of so much of that journey, though, was we're going to do whatever we can to get away from this. But at the same time, they sent a lot of stuff after us when we were still at that property and in that house. And there was a massive, long story there. That's what that chronicles our journey out of that until we eventually wrote the book. I started speaking out on shows, and I was like, if I'm gonna come out, I'm gonna come out with everything all right now. I'm not gonna be like, I got some secret documents, you guys. You don't want to.
This guy has a book. We need his book.
Know about, you know. It's like no, you just burn it. Yeah. You burn the whole house down. That's
the best way to do it. Yeah. I've been told that if you have sensitive stuff, you don't just piece it out. You drop it like a nuke. That's right. Do it all at one time.
Oh yeah.
And that's good that you did that.
There's still a lot of dead man switches out there. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of contingencies that are available should it ever go real bad. But she loved me, man. That woman loved on me like nobody else has ever loved me. Her name means safe harbor.
Really?
That's exactly what she was to me.
Wow.
Because I had to tell her all this stuff, man. And I came unglued on her. I mean, I became everything worst version of me I'd ever been. And she loved on me. And she was
Yeah.
TV, man. We started talking to each other face to face like this. And all of these stories began to come out about what her childhood was like. And I was like, what? That's what a Christmas is like?
Wow.
I'm like, I realized I was raised in a cult. It just was so controlled that I didn't realize it was not normal to have grandpas doing that to their grandsons. Like, I genuinely didn't understand the level of insane life I had because I'd been around. I was only allowed access to other people that had that kind of stuff. So then if I talked about it, they're like, yeah, of course, that's what uncles do. It's just creepy, weird stuff, whatever. But her and I talking about this stuff, and I'm starting to tell my stories to her, and she is like sick. She's like, that's not okay. Like, that should never happen. I'm like, I'm telling you about one day. I was like, what do you mean never happen? Like, happened for years. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I didn't have the paradigm of understanding what a normal person life was like. My parents, my mom, the women would stay awake when there was these family reunions because it was disgusting. And they didn't want their children getting. And so they would stay awake for days. And I thought that was normal. They'd be awake watching everybody, like all the time for days. And they would be out of their mind by the end of it, right? They're like hallucinating and all the rest. But they just didn't want their children or grandchildren to go through what they knew their husband did, or they knew that his brothers did in the Knights of Columbus. Like, they just wanted to try to protect him. But I thought it was normal that parents and moms would be awake for days on end and just suddenly pick up one day and we're going to travel 2,700 miles, you know? And like, that's normal. I thought that's how people were. I didn't understand people needed like rest and recovery and all of this. You could just switch personalities and keep going and backlogging it and use augmentation from whatever, drugs, people, anything you needed, you know? But like, they extracted all kinds of stuff out of people, and that was what they would run off of, you know? And it was their little serum, you know, that they would, their nectar of the gods that they would run off of. But it's just human hormone isotopes in a lot of ways, blood plasmas and stuff like that they would use. But this stuff would just jack them up and they just go for days, you know? And it's this new way of augmenting the brain that they utilize. And other people think they're just buying little pills, but that's what they're getting, you know? It's the byproduct of that industry. And so it took a long time for me to hear that. But when I hear people talk like normal about like energy levels and capacities and things, like it helps to humble me back to like experiences around of like, not everyone's lives are like this. Not everyone's so extreme in everything they do. There's people that live balanced lives, and it's good. And I think that's what I was genuinely hungry for by the time I met my wife.
So I'm going to conclude the video here. It's about to end, you guys. Almost done. Let's just
here. So on that note, I'm assuming one of your motivations is to help them get out.
Yeah. Or stay in and get it done. Now has been trying to build a new family, build a new legacy and understanding of like, what can we build without the access to the empire? Because I don't want the blood money. Like, I want my children to know purity. I want them to understand what the gift is of creativity and curiosity. And I want to cultivate for them a life of abundance and of passionate pursuits. And that's what's led me into permaculture and into studying under all of these regenerative farmers and into this just whole other industry that I have such a love and a passion for. You know, like, I was cleaning out chicken pens and goose coops and rotating tractors and moving fencing. I was up till 11:15 last night moving poly netting, you know, so that my geese have some more better grass to get onto, you know, like, yeah. And I love that, you know, I love that. But at the end of the day, like, there's another half of me, man, that just, I drove through a tunnel on the way here and I could have cried. I felt like I was coming home. You know, like, I miss the underground. I miss that world. I miss my brothers in arms, you know, like, there's a lot of them out there, and a lot of them are dads now, and they're just still sleeper cells. You know, they still don't have a clue on how to get out. They still have no idea how to stop the nightmares and how to stop the screaming rage fest and how to, like, they're doing everything they can to hold it together, man, and they're falling apart. And that's why I'm out here.
So on that note, I'm assuming one of your motivations is to help them get out.
Yeah. Or stay in and get it done. Yeah.
Do you want to go back in and get it done?
Bro, every day of my life. But I made a different choice. I made a covenant with my wife. That's different, you know?
Yeah.
My wants became subjected to another. And her needs supersede my wants every day of the week. And I got to lay down my life for her. That's the joy that I get to do. I get to sacrifice my dreams on the altar of marriage. And it's a good thing, because then I allow the Father to build for me an inheritance that I didn't gain hastily.
Wow. That's deep stuff, man. That's deep stuff.
Because he's saying they gain power and wealth by giving their own kids to all this horribleness, sacrificing children, and like all these old men walking around with these kids acting like it's their grandchild or their sons, but it's really like they're using those kids and they're just their possessions. It's just ridiculous. It's crazy. It's wild.
I'm going to bring up one more topic before we transition into the military stuff heavy. And this kind of goes back to these creatures and such. You said about underground. Do you think that there's coming a time where they're going to be coming up in abundance and humanity is going to be faced with a very real reality, not just dorks like me that have a podcast to talk about it, but these normal people who think I'm crazy? Do you think they're going to be faced with the reality that these monsters do exist?
I think so.
And what do you think that would look like if it happened?
I think the better question is what's been written first and foremost, because I can have an opinion on an idea, but it's been prophesied that this is absolutely going to come to pass. Mm-hmm. And it says a third of dominion is going to get given over to death. And this is why I say it's the underground for a reason. Like that's where they build their armies. They build them inside the earth and they release them when they're ready. But it says that dominion's given to them to kill a quarter of the earth with a sword, with plague, with famine, and the beasts of the earth. Jesus. That's not your little chihuahua. Mm-hmm. You know, this is the beasts of the earth. These are the real beasts. And these are the beasts that know they're beasts and they've embraced it. And there's a lot of people man and beast were created on the sixth day, both of them. There's a difference. We're image bearers of our creator. The beast is not. But any man can become a beast if he wants to. And he's willing to do anything it takes in order to become that. And there's a lot who have done that. And then there's a whole lot of them that have been bred and created and cultivated and shepherded for this time because they're their soldiers, you know?
You guys, Revelations is starting to make a lot more sense with this guy, what he's talking about. I'm going to read the book of Revelations again. I'm almost done. I think I have like a few chapters left, but I'm going to restart it and read it again because it's starting to make a lot more sense. This stuff is all going to happen. It's in the Bible. It's prophecy. And now we can see it start to even sound real, right? Like him talking is like he's talking about the book of Revelations.
Like the conquistadors, when they came here, man, they came with an armada. Okay, they came ready to invade, and they brought beasts that these people had never seen in their lives. You got to understand what a horse did to these people, because the horses had been here in the Americas long before the Spaniards got here. That's a lie that you all learned. They're like, yeah, the Spanish brought the horses. No, they just don't want to tell you that the horse has always been here. It's just that it wasn't all over here. And when those war horses showed up, right? These are animals that get drunk on blood. These are animals that eat blood. These are dogs that are trained to eat blood. Elephants that are used in battle that are trained with mulberries to eat blood. Like these are beasts and they are nothing but a beast. You don't put that beast out in the child's playground because it will kill every child in that place. Those are the beasts of the earth. And there's a lot of those kinds of beasts like you're talking about. People might throw in this cryptid category, whatever else. But no, these are just hunters and killers. And that's what they're effective at. And I believe a lot of them, though, still have the capacity of sentient thought and they're capable of having a redemptive plan of their life and a purpose and a trajectory. Just most people aren't ready to comprehend or contend with that. And so that's why, like, I'm out here trying to tell people about dragons. I'm trying to explain to them the realities of what these serpents are and understand what this class of beings really are and their progeny are, and that we are still have dominion and authority over them no matter what they are. But also with some of them, you better learn how to fight kinetically against creatures that are not on what you would consider as your top 10 big game animal hunting stuff. And that's what launched me into advanced weaponry and development with the military and stuff, is because I wanted to fight back against something that had scaled armor.
All right, guys, I'm going to stop that right here. Let's see if this guy does he have a YouTube channel? Let's see, Nathan Reynolds. He needs a YouTube channel. There's other podcasts that he's on. He was on the Cult of Mind Control Dissociation, Lucifer and Bloodlines in the Gospel with Nathan Reynolds. This stuff is insane. Oh, here he is. Nathan Reynolds, the Linen Railroad, is an author and a pharmacist starting to sell on everything from tactics. Is this his?
What are you guys doing? Y'all recharged?
Is this him? Oh, I think this is him. The Linen Railroad. Okay. Ooh wee. I just subscribed to his channel. So, ooh wee. Okay. Yeah, go check his channel out. But maybe we should end with a Bible passage. Let's see. Bible verse in Revelations. Dominion. About later days. Let's see. See 2 Timothy 3 1 verses 1 through 5. Understand this, that in the last days there will come times of difficulty, for people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having the appearance of godliness but denying its power. Avoid such people. That's a good one. And then let's see if there's something from Revelations. Okay, let's see. Okay, so Revelation 4 1 through 11. Let's see. After this I looked, and behold, a door standing open in heaven, and the first voice which I had heard speaking to me like a trumpet said, "Come up here, and I will show you what must take place after this." At once I was in the spirit, and behold, a throne stood in heaven, with one seated on the throne, and he who sat there had the appearance of jasper and carnelian, and around the throne was a rainbow that had the appearance of an emerald. Around the throne were 24 thrones, and seated on the thrones were 24 elders, clothed in white garments, with golden crowns on their heads. From the throne came flashes of lightning and rumblings and peals of thunder, and before the throne were burning 7 torches, which are the 7 spirits of God. Okay. Revelation 1 through verse 3. Blessed is the one who reads out loud the words of this prophecy, and blessed are those who hear and who keep what is written in it, for the time is near. Revelation 1:1, the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show to his servants the things that must soon take place. He made it known by sending his angel to his servant John. Yeah, let's see here. Matthew 24:21-22. For then there will be great tribulation, such as has not been from the beginning of the world until now, no, and will never be. And if those days had not been cut short, no human being would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. Oh, yeah. The end is near. Prophecies are fulfilling. Prophecies of the Bible are fulfilling, which is what's like getting me thinking. I'm like, there's wars going on. There's rumors of wars. There's famine. There's a lot of earthquakes going on. You're always hearing about earthquakes here and there. And so it's time to get close to God. That's all that I can say. It's time to kingdom up, you guys, because this stuff is real, and God gave us a tool, the Bible, his word, and everything comes to pass. Everything in the word is coming to pass, and it is, and it's going to. So we got to prepare ourselves. Ooh, Jesus, please help us. Help us. And give us wisdom and strength and understanding so that we can get through all of this, and You can't get through it without Jesus, and we got to get close to God, you guys. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Leave a thumbs up if you made it this far. And I'm shook. I'm shook. This is all starting to make sense. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you guys for watching.